All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Prop Live. Back in my own shop this week. This is a show that we do every week where we take your prop and costume making questions and answer them. This week, I have a guest, someone who's never been on the show before, but should have been, but is now, Mr. Igor Pinski of MrPinski Props. Hello,
Yes,
sir.
How's it going, everybody?
Looks like everybody's doing great. We got the chat going. Go to punishprops.com/live. You'll see we've got information there, how to join the IRC chat. And people always seem to be having a good time down there. So if you're watching live, go over there and check it out. Igor, you make really cool stuff, man.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Big fan of yours.
Thank you very much. For the uninitiated, MrPinski Props, if you look on Facebook and on Etsy, you can find some really cool stuff that you make and sell. Ta-da! Here's your Etsy store. If you look up MrPinski Props on Etsy, you can see some really cool stuff to buy. I'm eyeballing that lawgiver. That's pretty awesome.
That was a fun one. That's been like just a blessing in itself, man. Like, so it was honestly that was my first part that I've ever made from like laser cut stuff. That was like my first introduction into laser cut pieces.
That is pretty cool. And of course you have the Pinsky badge like you do. Awesome. That's really cool. So anyway, folks should definitely go check that out. And the other thing you've got that's going to be handy for me is you're on Flickr. So you've got albums for all the different things that you've made. Folks should definitely go over and check all that stuff out. For example, I saw you at San Diego Comic-Con wearing your Shredder armor. That was really awesome. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you made your Shredder armor?
Shredder was a really cool experience. Just because like everything I've ever done has been kind of the conventional way of doing things out of styrene and sculpting and all that stuff. And with Shredder, I finally got to try out Worbla, which was like really cool. And you know, like everything that I've learned so far has been just Googling and going on your page, going on Harrison's page, going on Tom's page, just like learning how everybody else does things and then just kind of figuring it out on my own. And this is my first time going on YouTube and looking at how cosplay girls make their armor.
Did you check out anything that Svetlana over at Kamui Cosplay made?
She's amazing.
Yeah, she's really, really good.
Yeah.
For folks that don't know, Svetlana has a bunch of really cool books on making armor from Worbla, and you can buy them in the Punish Props store. So if you're looking to get into Worbla, she's the one. Let me see here. I got to find one picture because I definitely saw you. How was your San Diego Comic-Con experience this year?
It was really cool. You know, like I've been doing Comic-Con probably for the last 4 or 5 years, so technically I guess like I'm still new to the whole experience. You know, my first time I went there, I wore the Daft Punk helmet.
Oh yeah.
The gold Guy Manual helmet, and like that was just, it was an experience unlike any other. You know, like you step into that place and it's like you don't even know what's going on. It's so overwhelming, and now like going more and more often, you start to kind of like plan how you're gonna do things. Like I'm gonna wear this one day, I'm gonna wear this on another day. You know.
Yeah.
So like, and then you start making costumes just to have enough stuff to wear over 4 or 5 days, and it's
I did something similar. It wasn't too extreme, but on Wednesday of Comic-Con, on preview night, I did stuff with my District 9 rifle, and I trimmed my beard down so I had a little bit of a mustache to be like Wickus.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day I was Commander Shepard, so I trimmed the mustache off.
Yeah, dude, I was super like bummed out that I missed you in costume both days.
I know. By the time, so here we are. I did run into you. I'm glad I ran into you just on the floor out of 150,000 people. I was like, I know that Shredder. Which was amazing. But by Friday, I was done with costumes. I had worn my Shepard for like 12 hours the previous day, and I was like, I'm all done.
You know, I've never worn anything just completely made out of foam. I imagine that's got to be like difficult for a long time.
Yeah, it just doesn't breathe. A lot of sweating.
Yeah,
So,
like that shredder is just totally made out of basically a big blanket.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it's all quilted, it gets so hot in that thing.
Oh, yeah. Hey, folks watching live, by the way, if you go over to the event page, there's a Q&A app where you can post your questions. If you have any questions about how to make any props or any costumes, please post them there. We'll start answering those shortly. We do have some that I got earlier that we'll start digging into in a moment. But before we do that, I have a couple things I want to talk about, including San Diego Comic-Con. I posted a recap video on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/punishprops, where I kind of go over my whole thing, all the fun stuff. Did you have a favorite thing from the floor, like a prop, like a screen use prop or anything like that really spoke to you?
There was a couple of things, like I don't know if you remember. I think it was the huge display from Weta.
Mm-hmm.
Like all that armor. That was
Yeah.
nuts to me. Like I must have stared at that for over an hour.
They had a bunch of stuff from Warcraft, like fresh off the set from filming the Warcraft movie, which was pretty amazing.
Gorgeous stuff. And the other thing that was really cool that I've been dying to see since, like, I don't know, I was 15 years old. I've always wanted to see his ZF1 in person.
Yeah.
And they had it, and like I just went nuts for that thing. And right next to it, they had Jim Carrey's Riddler cane.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, and I was wearing my Riddler the day that I saw it, and like I was there to like compare my cane because that was the one that I based mine off of.
Pretty cool.
You know, and just the scale was completely different. Mine was like a foot and a half longer. You know, it was ridiculous, but it was still really cool just to see like that piece in person. You know, I've been admiring it forever, and there it was.
My favorite thing that I saw was the Eagle 5 Winnebago model from Spaceballs. I got a picture. There's me with it. I was like, look, it's the real one, you guys.
That's awesome.
That was really cool. It was the first time it's been out of the studio since they filmed the movie, which is pretty awesome. And I'll tell you what, the model making on that was amazing. Like, they spared no expense. It was really good.
Oh yeah, like all the small, like, just sculptures and figures and all that stuff that's over there is just like insanity. You know, like the stuff that we do is really cool, and then you see it and it's 10 times smaller.
Yeah,
and it's just as clean. Mm-hmm. It's just it really like makes you put your work into perspective. You're like,
oh
wow,
yeah.
There's some really talented people out there.
There really are. Yeah, there's a reason they get paid a lot to do that stuff for big movies. The other thing that I wanted to talk about before we rolled out is we have the fourth and final part, again, on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/punishprops. The last part of the District 9 rifle, which I've got the master sitting behind me right there, that guy. Where we go over casting all of those pieces out of a urethane resin and then painting up the whole final piece. So that's up on my YouTube channel as well. Folks should definitely check that out. The guys at Tested did a whole piece on my District 9 video build, and that will be out soon on their channel. So also look forward to that. It's really cool. Cool. That's about all I had. Anything else you wanted to chat about before we start taking some questions?
No, not really. Let's get into this.
All right, let's do this. So let's see here. This first question came in earlier on my Facebook page. This is from Downtime Props. Let's see here. When you're doing write-ups for your page, do you have an outline do you follow, or do you write notes as you're building your pieces? Igor, have you ever done any sort of like build write-up for your stuff? Because I know you do your Flickr thing, which is pretty concise with all of your photos, but do you do any like written word type stuff for it?
You know, I really wish I was better on all of that stuff. You know, you make so much stuff sometimes, and you take so many pictures that sometimes you kind of fall behind. I try to kind of do explanations on every picture of like what's going on in the photo. Like I remember the biggest reason that I even started doing it was because I saw Harrison doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And when I was learning to do all my stuff, it was before Harrison actually started explaining what was going on in those pictures, and I had to kind of figure it out on my own. You know, and then I was like, oh, I'll just do that too. You know, why not? But every now and again, like when I get the chance, I just go from album to album and just start explaining what's going on in the photo.
Yeah. What I find most vital, if you're going to do progress type stuff and you're with the potential of doing write-up stuff afterwards, is to take many, many photos. Because if you skip a step in your photos, you can't recreate that. You can't go back and take that photo again. So make sure you take more photos than you think you need. When it comes to writing the information, all you have to do is go back through that album of photos and just add a description to each one of them. That you can do after the fact, and that's usually what I end up doing. Although what I've been doing now is I just take video, lots and lots of video, because I put them up on my YouTube channel. And then if I want to do a write-up with images, I'll just pull stills out of the video and then put a write-up behind that as well.
I need to do one of those videos one day.
It's a whole lot of work.
Yeah.
Cool. Hopefully that helped you out there, Downtime Props. If you do a write-up on one of your things that you're building, let me know. I'd like to check it out. Let's see here. This next one comes from Lee. Let's see. Is there any risk to heat forming EVA foam pieces after it's been cemented together with barge? I'm worried the barge will loosen or thin permanently if I add enough heat to shape something. If so, do you have any tips that might reduce the risks? Do you do much EVA foam armor making?
You know, I've done it, and you know, not quite as much as you have. But I have dealt with barge, and the thing about foam is that it's finicky stuff. You know, so it does tend to want to go back to its flat shape after a while. And I found like when you do heat it, there is a chance for that seam to come apart. The thing that I've found, especially like with pieces that are maybe painted that need to stay round or, you know, spherical or whatever, when you store them, to kind of like bind them up a little bit. That way they stay in shape, and even if they come out of shape, if you do that and you leave them laying around for a while, they'll retain that shape without the heat, and you don't actually have to worry about the seam.
Yeah, I also try it. Here's a good example. If you laminate a bunch of foam pieces together, they're going to have seam lines that you can sand down really smooth on like a belt sander. But then if you heat it, those seam lines can become more apparent where the barge seam edges show. It's the same case for anywhere where you've glued seam edges together with your armor. I prefer to do as much heat forming as I can before the pieces have been glued together. And I also prefer to rely on curved edges to create complex curves. Like for a helmet, put a seam down the middle, and when you force that seam together, when you glue it together, have that create the shape rather than trying to heat form it after the fact. That way you're not blasting that seam with heat to try and manhandle it into shape. That's what I do.
Yeah.
There you go. But yes, long story short, yes, heat can definitely pull your barged seams apart. All right, here's one from Nick, my buddy Nick. Actually, I did not see him at San Diego Comic-Con, but I know he was there. He says, what criteria do you use to decide whether to make foam your armor from EVA foam or something rigid like Worbla? Or, yeah. What criteria? Like, let's say, good example, your shredder armor. Let's talk about that again because I'm obsessed with it. So just tell... You said you used Worbla for that one in particular. Why did you end up going with Worbla?
That one was an interesting piece. The reason why I went with Worbla to begin with was I've never used it before. So I really wanted to try to do something that I've never done before. But I know like Worbla on its own does have its limits. You know, that particular armor, it needs to look a certain way, and you just can't get all of that out of foam. Foam will be a little bit thicker, and if you want to go with thinner foam, it'll be more flimsy. Like the shredder armor that I made, the initial bases are made out of Worbla, and the Worbla is 2 layers, so it's actually a little bit more rigid, and it's not filled with foam the way that a lot of people do it, because I didn't want it to be super thick. And then it's covered in leather, and then all of the all the borders are actually made out of ABS that were pop riveted into place. Like there's a lot going on with that armor. But if I were to make it out of foam, for that particular piece, I think it would just be a little bit too thick. It would almost be like it would work for like a super shredder. It would probably work for that. But for the particular look I was going for, I think like Worbla was just a better choice. Although like I probably could have done it out of like heat form styrene or stuff like that.
Yeah, I will say too, like you can get thin pieces of foam to become pretty rigid, but you end up having to add a lot of resin on top of it and then doing a lot of sanding. So it really depends on where you want to spend your money and where you want to spend your time. I know that a lot of people will actually make the base of their armor out of EVA foam and then cover it in Worbla if they want it to be more rigid. It's just a fast way to get the base shape done really quickly, and then you can make it more rigid by adding Worbla on top of it. I'm also glad that you pointed out that your shredder had Worbla and ABS and leather, because there is, even though I may claim sometimes that foam is just the way to go for everything, just about every armor project ends up being some sort of mixed media project. You end up incorporating a lot of different materials based on your time frame, based on what you can afford, and based on what you're good at working with. There you go. Thank you, Nick, for your question. Boop. See here, this next one comes from Fearless Facade, one of our regulars. Hey, Bill, do you have any pro tips on doing live streams from your shop? I'm considering setting up a Twitch channel to let people watch all my builds. Any recommendations on a webcam and lighting, etc.? Sure. Have you done much in video, Igor? You said you want to. You're like,
I'd like to. There's just so much stuff involved that I don't have. Like as far as my video goes, I have my iPhone, and that's as far as I go. I've done like 2 small videos of me opening molds after I pour them, and that's it.
If you do, it has never been easier to dive into live streaming. Twitter, let's see, yeah, Twitter owns it. It's a thing called Periscope. Is the new hotness where you can live stream from your phone, if that's a thing you want to do, all done wirelessly through the magic of the internet. So if you're looking for the easiest barrier to entry to live streaming, that's one way to do it. I want to do stuff on Twitch. I have a contract with a partner, so I'm stuck on YouTube for a while. But we do all of ours through Google Hangouts. They call them Hangouts On Air. That's pretty cool because it's easy to pull people in. So, for example, I sent an invite link to Igor here. He clicked on it, and then boop, he came in here. And then we can have a chat, and then that gets broadcasted out, which is pretty easy. The camera, are you using like a laptop right now, or what are you using for a camera?
Yeah, it's just my laptop. I'm really fortunate to actually have everything all in one piece because I wouldn't know how to put it together.
Yeah. So if you're looking for the lowest barrier to entry, a lot of laptops or even desktop computers, like my Mac in the other room, has a built-in camera on it. So you don't really need much to get started there. I will say I have the Logitech C920 webcam. I have a pair of them. In fact, I have one over here, so you can see my one thing I bought at Comic-Con. I got my little R2-D2 over there, and a little house I built for him. I'll have a video on that pretty soon. I have 2 of those webcams, and they're really, really nice webcams. We'll have a link in the show notes so you can go see on Amazon where they are. But that's the camera I use. It's surprisingly low tech. I have a Yeti microphone. We'll have a link to that as well. But if you're just getting started, usually like what you've got, Igor, where you're using your built-in camera, built-in microphone, and then you just jump on Twitch or jump on YouTube, what do they call it? Google Plus Hangout On Air or whatever it is. You can get started. You can literally start live streaming tomorrow with just that. Never been easier. There you go, Fearless Facade. If you do start live streaming, let me know. I'd be willing to check it out. Pretty stoked to see what other people, other makers are doing in the old live streaming space. All right. This next one comes from Sam over at Bio Cosplay. He says, last week it was mentioned that in Frank's shop, they used WeldWood contact cement to seal their foam. Will you be using this method in your shop, or do you still prefer Plasti Dip? Hey, I have a good question, actually, when it comes to using Worbla. Did you say you covered all the Worbla in leather?
All of the Worbla got covered up in leather, and then it was edged out in ABS. I did try filling it to make it nice and smooth, so because the edges of the armor have to look like metal, right?
Right, they're visible.
So I needed it to be just kind of as smooth as possible, and when it's painted, it needs to not be porous. And I tried a bunch of different methods. Tried glue, tried filler primer, all that stuff, and nothing was quite getting me to the level that I wanted, because metal should look clean. You have that nice sharp edge around it and all that. And I'm sure that there's a bunch of other people that can do way better than Worbla than I can, really. But this was my first go at it, and I mean, I was pretty happy with where I got that. And the whole thing only took me half of one of the jumbo sheets, which I was pretty happy about, because that stuff's super expensive.
Oh yeah, yes. So with Worbla and with foam, there are many different ways to seal it. We ended up using WeldWood. Has a contact cement that's all water-based and non-toxic, and it's really bad to use as glue. But it's a great way to seal your foam because it stays nice and flexible. I don't know if I'm going to be using that. I do know the next foam armor build, I'm going to use latex. I have a jug of it. It's around the corner there. I got 5 gallons worth of latex, and that's what I'm going to use to seal my next set of armor. Latex rubber, nice and durable, a big old thick layer of rubber. So look forward to that. Oh, and he mentions Plasti Dip. I'll use Plasti Dip because I can go to the store and just buy it in a can, and it sprays out of the can. If I need something now and I need it to be done tomorrow, I'll use Plasti Dip. There you go. There you go, Sam. I don't know if I'll be using that WeldWood contact cement stuff, but at least I know it's in the back of my brain, so if I need it, it's always there. Actually, I have a good question for you, Igor. You ever work in a big old shop with a bunch of other people? Or are you mostly a solo operation?
I have, yeah.
So because you're down in the old Los Angeles area where more and more people do that.
I am, yeah. I've gotten to work with, it's really cool living in LA and doing what we do. Just and as long as you're fairly sociable, you can always meet people that are building things, and all of those people usually go, hey, I need help building 100 gravestones out of foam, can you help me out? And oh yeah, I can do that, why not? And that'll be done all in a day, and after that another call comes, and then another one. It's kind of interesting, just because I think that the biggest advantage to doing that is you get to work with things that you never thought of working with. Just getting to work with new materials. I just got to work with a 3D print a little while ago, and I've never worked with 3D printed anything.
Yeah,
that was totally different.
While I was down in LA, and they mentioned last question mentioned Frank Ippolito, I got to work in his shop for a week, and I have actually never worked in a big shop environment with a lot of other people. We were building a bunch of suits of, let's just say, we're building a lot of foam armor, like you do, for a commercial, for a video game commercial that is unreleased, unannounced yet. But here I walk in, I'm like the foam armor guy on the internet, and I left that shop having learned an awful lot about making armor out of foam that I didn't know before, because everyone else in the shop had their own way of doing it with little nuggets of wonderful information here and there. So that was really cool. I would love to be able to do more of that stuff in the future.
Yeah, that was when I was the first time I worked in a shop was the first time I learned what L200 was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, game changer.
Oh yes. All right, cool. This next question here comes from Ayla. Question is, I'm trying to make some armor for my Nova cosplay. The problem I keep running into is the chest area. What is the best way to make a breastplate in foam? They attached a picture. Let me see if I can do that. There it is. So there's Nova. and they want to make a breastplate out of foam. That's kind of tricky. That armor is really skin tight. So if you're going to add like foam armor paneling, you might consider making it out of like that 6mm foam, just thinner stuff, because you don't want to add too much bulk. It's a really tiny picture. But hey, actually, I have a good question for you, Igor. Do you ever work off of like a torso form, like a body form, or anything like that?
Yes. That like honestly, that's really the best way to do all this stuff is, you know, because you can really only hold stuff up to your own body for, you know, so long until you start getting stuff wrong.
And you can't shove pins through the foam into your own body. I mean, you could, but it's really handy to do that to something that won't bleed.
Yeah, it would hurt though. Actually, like I think I saw that question a little while ago, and one of the things that I like to use that it really only works for the front half of the body as far as like figuring out where things go. It's really cheap, and you can get them on eBay. They're like these little plastic front halves of mannequins that they hang T-shirts off of.
Oh. I'm gonna look on Amazon.
I don't know what they're called. I got one downtown, and my buddy has a few of them. But it's like it's the front half of a mannequin, and it's super thin. It looks like vacuum formed styrene, and they only cost like $30.
Oh, cool! I'm looking here on Amazon. I just looked up T-shirt mannequin, and there's a bunch of like just torso type things. This one's $20 plus $11 shipping, so $30. Yeah, a whole bunch of options there on Amazon.
You can totally work off of that stuff for patterning, and that'll help you just get your proportions right.
Yeah, I do know with the work we were doing last week, they had a bunch of again, I think it was from a Gap store that had gone out of business. They were selling all the mannequins for really cheap, and they were like foam. They were not solid plastic. They were squishy foam, or they with cloth over them. So we could take the foam armor and just pin it straight to the mannequin when we were trying to figure out the different
that's awesome.
Yeah, the different proportions. Similarly, if you make a duct tape dummy of yourself, you could do that exactly same thing.
Yeah, I've done that too.
Cool. Ayla here also says she's looking to start my own props page for sale. I know marketing yourself and branding is important. Do you have a suggestion for a base site? Should I go with something like Etsy or build my own site to buy directly from? I would say you can do both of those things. I don't have an Etsy store, but Igor does. Again, if you look up MrPinski Props on Etsy, you can go check that out. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how the whole thing works with Etsy?
The really cool thing that I like about Etsy is that it's for people that don't know how to use computers. I'm one of those people, so like I can go as far as typing in descriptions and uploading pictures, and that's about as far as I go. But when it comes to building sites, you know, I needed one of my buddies to help me with a WordPress, which, you know, I realize like now is pretty what's the word for that? Embarrassing. I guess embarrassing would be the best word. But what's really cool about Etsy is that you can use tag words and stuff like that, and people can find your work, which is really good. That, and they're also a lot cheaper than eBay. So they take a very small percentage, and they're really more about the seller, where eBay is kind of like the other way around. You know, and when it comes to builders and makers, you know, it's a little bit tougher because we put so much of our work in you know, so much of our hearts into our work, and eBay doesn't really see it that way. When like somebody just says, "Oh, I didn't get your stuff, sorry," you know, like Etsy's not quite like that. And it's a little bit more builder friendly. It's a site for the maker, which I really like.
That's cool. And the other thing you touched on, it's a discovery platform. People go there to look for things to buy, and that's where you want to put your stuff. Cool. Well, good luck to you, Ayla, with your foam armor and your selling of stuff. This next one here comes from Michael. Michael wants to know, have either of you encountered specific resources for finding or creating custom textured fabrics? There seem to be a lot of resources for custom prints and colors, but textures are a little scarier. This is definitely an area where I have very little expertise. I don't know about you.
When it comes to fabrics, yeah, I'm really the same way. Like, I don't have a lot of experience in it, but the thing that I do have on my side is the RPF, and I also have Facebook, where I know a lot of people that are tailors, and also living in LA, you know, it's really helpful because we have downtown LA, which just has a fabric district, and you can find just about anything there. So like, that's really cool. But if you need specific patterns on fabric, sometimes you have to make your own stencils to really get that right.
Yeah, that's generally where I go. Is I'll just DIY it, or I go to Joann's and I just poke around until I find something that's close or looks neat. But I do like that you pointed out the RPF. A good example. I know a dude who was looking for the specific weave of fabric that they used for a specific, what is it, Doctor Who coat or something like that. Through the RPF and through his own research, he got in touch with the one company that made that exact cloth in the UK and was able to order like a bunch of yards of it and make his own perfectly accurate coat.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's possible. You have to do a lot of digging. You have to ask around a lot, but it's possible. I know it's possible. I've never done it. I know it's possible.
And the RPF, if you don't have your own membership, you really should get one and just post up like an I need help thread.
Yeah, you can join for free. Yeah. All right, cool. Thank you, Michael. Good luck finding your perfectly textured fabrics. This next question here comes from Volpin Props. There appears to be a visual thing. There we go. Hello, I've recently started planning out a build for the 4th Horseman from Destiny and was wondering how either of you might tackle the engraved silver bits. Let's see here. So I've got a picture here. It's this like Old West looking kind of gun thing, and it's got some filigree looking stuff on the this part of the gun. I don't know what. I'm gonna come clean right now. I don't know what gun parts are called. But Igor, how would you go about tackling that filigree stuff?
Well, it really depends on what kind of detail you're looking for and how clean you want it to be. If it's more of like a cosplay piece, something that you're looking just a one-off type of thing, and you want it to look, excuse the expression, good enough, I found that for stuff that looks like that, puff paint works really well.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah, puff paint is just a godsend. Like, actually, when I was initially doing the shredder armor, I was gonna make it look exactly the way that it looked in the movie. And the way that it looked in the movie, it has all this like webbing that goes over it, and then it's got the little blades that come out of it. And I initially used puff paint to get that effect. And if you wanted something detailed like that, and that needs to be just slightly raised and kind of beveled looking, puff paint works really well, and it takes paint over it. After you just do a little bit of priming, it looks amazing.
Yeah, you can do some really neat things with puff paint. You can make it look like welds. Actually, on your shredder, you had some areas that look welded. How did you do those?
That stuff was actually made out of epoxy sculpt.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so all I did was I just kind of rolled like a little bit of almost like a worm type of, string, and then I just put it along where the welds should be. And you can use a little sculpting tool to just kind of put like these little crescents into it. Mm-hmm. And that'll get like that little weld look to it. And then you get a little cup with some rubbing alcohol in it. You dip your finger in there and you just kind of just run over it with your finger, and it all looks like perfect welds. That's
pretty good.
Super easy, and you look like an amazing sculptor.
Yeah, cool.
Which I am not.
Yeah. The other cool thing about puffy paint is it's pretty cheap. It comes in a bottle with a little nozzle on it, so it's good to control. And you can practice a bunch on some scraps to sort of get your technique down. So there you go, Valen Props. There's a good solution for you right there. All right, this next one comes from Omega Forge. The question is, when you make build videos, do you record the whole build video before you edit the video and post parts of it, or do you record parts of the build and post those? I'll give you a quick rundown on how I do my videos. When I'm building a prop, I have my camera. It's right over there. I just drag it on a tripod around next to me, and then I point it at where I'm working, and if there's a part of the build I know I want to capture, I just hit record and I do the part. And that what ends up, so a good example with the District 9 build, I have over 70 gigabytes of video footage. Some of those videos are 20 minutes long just to get like 5 seconds of footage. But I'll leave it running to make sure I capture everything I need. Then I take all of that footage, throw it into Premiere, and I cut it down to the little bits that I know I need. And then I write an outline for the voiceover part of the video. Then I go and record that, and then the whole thing gets edited together. The part where I'm talking about my build, it's already done. The project has been done usually for weeks. And I've already edited part of the videos to make sure that I talk about everything I want to cover in the build video. Actually, someday I should actually put a behind-the-scenes video on how I put all that stuff together. Someday. There you go, Omega Forge. That's how I do what I do. And that's for when Igor starts doing his videos. Now he knows.
I'm going to take note of
that. Cool. This next one comes from Joe. Hi, my question is, I'm trying to build a combat shotgun. Oh, this is the one that Harrison made. Like the one that Volpin did. Let me give everyone a hint really quickly. If you want to build something and you want it to look good, you want to impress people, don't make something Harrison made because you will immediately get compared to Harrison. Nobody wants that.
That happened to me with one of my first builds. My first actual prop build was the gold Daft Punk helmet that he made.
Yep.
I spent probably $1,000 making it, and all of that money went into sandpaper and Bondo, and it was like initially made out of a paper model out of Pepakura, and it looked terrible when I was finished, and I sold it for $300, and then I rebuilt it, and that's what I took to San Diego Comic-Con my first year. And the very first person that saw me was like, "Oh, are you Volpin?" that just happened. I did all of that work just for somebody to say nice helmet, and I got, "Oh, you must be Volpin."
I did that to my pal Chris over at Almond Rock Creations. Before I ever met him, I saw him at PAX, and I ran up and said the same thing to him. Anyway, Joe here
compared to other people, if you do projects that they've already done.
Joe is looking to build a combat shotgun from Fallout, but he's using more affordable materials like PVC pipe for the barrels and pink foam and MDF. He's wondering what I would suggest to coat and protect the materials and what would be good for the PVC so that paint would stay. Igor, have you ever used Epsilon for coating foam?
I have not used Epsilon.
That's what I would go with. It's an epoxy that's meant to go over foam. It will not dissolve the pink foam, the insulation extruded polystyrene. So I would recommend that for any of your foam bits. If you are going to Bondo over your pink foam, make sure you spray paint it with something that won't eat it first. But yeah, you could use Epsilon to coat just about all of it. Or for your MDF, you can actually seal that pretty well with superglue.
Superglue works really well with MDF. Like I just finished building a predator spear, and that thing had like these little blades coming off of it, and they need to be really pointy. And if you try to sand MDF to a really fine point, it's paper flimsy, and if you just dunk that stuff with some super glue, it's rock hard. It's amazing, and it'll sand down really nice.
Yeah, the MDF will absorb a lot of that super glue and then cure rock hard. So there you go, Joe. There's a handful of things for you to try. let's see. Oh, and then if you want your PVC to paint really well, just sand it really well and use a good primer on it before you try and do any paint on it. So there you go. Priming works wonders. Here we have another question from another regular. Don't try this at home. Wants to know, what thickness of high impact polystyrene is your favorite to work with, and which would you speculate is the most commonly used? I have a huge sheet of like 16th inch. I think it's 16th inch. I'm attached to my computer. I can't grab it, but it's really thin polystyrene sheets. That's usually what I just have on hand. How about you, Igor?
That's probably the most common stuff that I end up using. Although because of I was doing so much Judge Dredd stuff, I had just sheets upon sheets of ABS lying around.
Mm-hmm.
So I used that stuff instead, and it's still the 16th inch. That's probably the most common stuff. Although I have worked with 18 or 1/8 inch.
Yeah.
Stuff, and that's what I made the blades for Shredder out of.
There you go. I do have some 1/8 inch stuff sticking around too. What I've found is I don't usually use styrene for volume. If I need to do that, I'll use something really cheap like MDF or foam. Mm-hmm. And then I'll put a sheet of styrene over that if I need like hard edges or if I need a really clean surface to work from. And then I just use the really thin stuff for that. It works out pretty good. Love that styrene. Cool. Thank you. Don't try this at home. This next one comes in from Mike. Let's see here. I'm making chain-wrapped gauntlets out of L200. Would manually gluing the chain a few links at a time down to the foam work with barge, or would you suggest another way? I'm using a semi-lightweight 3/16 inch chain, so I was wondering about trying that and then hit it with a matte clear finish to seal it in. Let's see here. The gauntlets are L200. I'm guessing he already has a chain. He's just worried about attaching the chain to the gauntlets.
Is it like actually a metal chain, or is it like a plastic chain?
I don't know. Personally, I would use a plastic chain. You can get like plastic costume chain things.
Yeah, and it's super light and it looks the part. And I actually, a little while ago, I found the best super glue in the world, in my opinion. Yeah, it's actually made by superglue.
Hey.
Who would have thought? And it comes in these awesome little 12 packs for like $4. It's absolutely amazing stuff, and it will glue almost anything together.
Cool.
Yeah, and I used a lot of it for my shredder build.
Awesome. Another thing you could probably do to attach your chains to your foam is to run a wire around the back side of a link where you're not really going to see it, and just poke the wire through your foam like a loop of it, and then twist it together on the back side of the foam. I would probably run like a piece of plastic or something back there so the wire doesn't rip through the foam. But then you basically can just tie your chain to your foam gauntlets. That plus some glue. That way you have a chemical bond and a physical bond to keep it in place. Oh, it's a lightweight metal chain. I'm getting in the chat an update. Mm-hmm. Cool. I personally would go with plastic, but if you already have the chain, and especially if it's metal, it's going to be a little heavy, then I would recommend tying it down as well as trying to glue it. There we go. Thank you, Mike. All right, that's the last of the questions we had from Facebook. We have a few more over here in the Q&A app, which you guys can't see, but I'm pointing to. This one comes from Jasper. What is your biggest FUBARD project or prop? What did you learn from it? Have any good screw-up stories? I know I've got a couple.
Probably, like it's weird. I've already mentioned it, but yeah, my first Daft Punk helmet. Probably my first 2 Daft Punk helmets, and it's really like kind of what got me started in making props just in general. And you know, it's really more about like learning your materials. But I decided to start with a PEP. You know, and I wanted to go PEP to mold to cast, where, you know, I should have gone another way and actually just made a real sculpture, the way that you should out of styrene and other stuff. And the nice thing about it is that you learn a lot of stuff from all your mistakes. You learn what not to do the next time around you try to redo that project again. The bad thing about it, you lose a lot of money.
You know what? The good
when you
news
lose
is
money, you gain in knowledge and experience.
And you can always get more money. That's fine. I would say, you know what? I haven't had anything like the final product turn out really bad, but the project that gave me the most grief was the StarCraft Ghost Rifle build that I did. And the two major problems I had was both with molding them. I had a mold box buckle and had a bunch of silicone just dump out of it, which is always a crying shame.
In there.
And then the other problem I had was a whole bunch of silicone curing inhibition, which is always a pain in the ass. So I've learned. Particularly Moldstar 15 has given me a lot of trouble in the past. So what I did, because I learned my lesson, with the big mold I made for this gun rifle body here, is I laid down a bunch of Rebound 25 as a print coat before I dumped the Moldstar on top of that, and I had exactly 0 curing inhibition. So there you go. Like you said, it was a pretty costly, as far as silicone cost is concerned, lesson to learn, but I did learn my lesson, which is
never make that mistake again.
Never again. No, sir. Thank you, Jasper. Let's see here. Another one from Omega Forge. Do you have any advice for a person starting a YouTube channel about making props like yours? Don't make it like mine. Do your own thing. Make it unique. How about this, Igor? If you're looking to start doing some video type things, what would you? Ooh, I have a good question for you. What is keeping you from starting to do videos?
Honestly, it's mainly time. Like I don't know. Maybe it's been lately, and I've been kind of just all over my costuming thing. But when I get commissions during the day, that's when I build other people's stuff. And then when I go home, I tend to take my own work home with me, and I'll end up working on my costumes on my couch watching TV. Before I really wish there was enough time in the day to do everything that I wanted to do and still be able to make all my costumes.
Yeah. The challenge, and you kind of hit it right on the head, is the time commitment, because shooting video and, more importantly, editing video is very time intensive. So what I would say is start trying to sneak little bits of that type of work into your daily workflow. So I can still build things really, really fast. So, for example, this rifle I built here, I built that in 3 weeks. My wife helped a lot. She gets tons of credit. But I also filmed the entire way, and filming what I do has become a normal part of my day-to-day routine while I'm building stuff. So if you can just remember to hit record on a camera while you're working on stuff, and then at the very least you've got all that footage to work with, then that's something to work from. Instead of going, oh, I wish I had, when it comes time to actually put the video together, saying, I wish I had more footage. Then what you do is you spend a whole weekend without sleeping and drinking a lot of coffee, and you edit that sucker, and then you have your first video done.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people do like photo montages of their builds, which is really cool. You can actually, if the thing that I do remember to do is take a whole bunch of pictures. I do remember to do that. So whenever I upload, like if you go to my Flickr, you'll see most of them are like at least 100 pictures. Some are way more than that. So you take more pictures, you make a montage, you set it to some music, and then you could do a little video of your final piece at the end. And it all kind of, like, if you put them all in order, it'll all kind of make sense as far as if you watch it a couple times and really think about what's going on in those pictures, you can kind of see a prop come from nothing to its final form and in your head, it'll all kind of link together. It'll all make sense.
Yeah. The other advice I would give for someone starting a YouTube channel is to post new content regularly. You'll notice on my channel, I do this live show, which the time commitment for this is less than me editing an entire video that's like a full build. That's a ton of work. But having the live show every week is a great way for me to generate more content that gets pushed out to my YouTube channel. I also do like video blog type stuff where I just sit down and talk in front of a camera. That's an easier way to make more content for my YouTube channel. So long as I find ways to keep consistently publishing content to my YouTube channel, that means that I consistently have people showing up to watch them. The easiest way for a YouTube channel to wither on the vine is to post one really good video and then take a month or two off because people forget and they don't come back for more. So
I think that's the way that Facebook's working now too. You know, like if you really want people to see your stuff, you really need to post at least something every day and something like of substance.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
for people to actually look at.
In the chat here, Omega Forge is saying that I know how to edit and make videos. It's just the promotion part that's hard for me. I'll tell you what, too, with YouTube, again, it's a discovery platform, like we were saying with Etsy. If you build something, like make a video, good example, I did a Destiny hand cannon video that just went crazy. It's got over 200,000 views, which is way more than any of my videos ever get. But I published it at the right time when Destiny was really big, and it got pushed into the recommended videos and just went bonkers. A little bit of that is luck, but a little bit of that is also tailoring your video content to be relevant and timely as well. So that's something else to consider when you're making your content. But more than that, I have over 250 videos on my channel. So it took me about 220 videos before one of them went crazy. So again, be consistent. Keep pushing content out there. It's not going to happen right away. It won't be your 100th video. It probably won't be your 200th video. It'll probably be, if it's like me, 220 or so videos in.
It takes a while.
Yeah.
It takes a while. I remember it took me probably a year to break 200 fans on my Facebook. Mm-hmm. You know, it takes a while, and then there's that one project that somebody likes. It gets shared, and then it gets shared again, and all of a sudden you wake up one morning and there's 1,000 new people, and you feel like you're the king of the world at that point.
Yeah, totally. There you go, Omega Forge. I do hope you start making videos. Again, if you do, let me know. I'd like to check them out. Here we go. We've got another regular. Old Gamers Rule wants to know, is it just me or is it a nightmare to get a nice, level, clean channel cut into MDF without the benefit of a CNC mill? Any suggestions? What's the last thing I did? I did some of that with this rifle here. I think if you want it to be really, really clean, like we were mentioning earlier, you may want to cut a channel, like cut the edges with a sharp knife, chisel it out, and then fill it with super glue to get a nice rigid surface that you could then sand down with a small file, something like that. That's what I would go with. What do you think, Igor?
You could do it that way, but it also depends on, you know, how you're building your piece, because really you can do what you were talking about with you know, doing an additive process and kind of building that base, and then taking two pieces of styrene and putting them really close together and then cutting it to shape.
Yeah, then you have a channel between them.
You have that perfect channel.
In fact, I think if we go, we'll put a link in the show notes, but I know Harrison did a bunch of that stuff on his Valkyrie rifle build. He had lots of thin panels of styrene that he cut out and then put near one another to make thin lines. Another thing you can do, and it really depends on the layout and the thickness and everything, but you can use a Dremel, and you can get a Dremel attachment to make it kind of like a router, where you can have a flat surface that it will keep the bit at a particular depth, and then you can get a router bit. And I have one right here. I have all my bits right here. So one of these tiny guys here. And this will chew out a nice, even piece of MDF, And if you have a straight edge and that attachment for the Dremel, you could actually route some pretty good thin channels. Again, this is like an 1/8 inch bit, so if you need it wider than this, you'll have to do a couple of passes. That's also an option. And we'll find that attachment I'm talking about. We'll put a link to that in the show notes.
I've also been using a really cool tool from what is it, from Proxxon. You know, they make those rotary tools. They also make something amazing, which I'm like in love with. I use it for almost everything now. You need to have their regular rotary tool in order to use it. Yeah, you know what's going on. So yeah, you need their rotary tool, and then you also need to buy their drill press, and their drill press takes the rotary tool. And
there you go.
And then that drill press also has another attachment that you can buy, and it makes that whole thing into a mini mill.
Ooh.
It's fantastic, and like I swear by it at this point. One of my buddies got it for me for my birthday. I think it's like $100 piece, but it's absolutely fantastic.
Holy crap! Micro Mill MF70. What? Yeah. I need this.
Yeah, one of the coolest pieces I've ever used, and like when people ask questions like, "What's your most used tool?" You know, my Dremel is, and because I use the Proxxon stuff, and they make attachments for their Dremels to make them into almost any tool you need it to be.
That is so cool.
And this is the one that has the motor built into it. There's one that's just an attachment for their drill press, but it looks exactly like that though.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a neat little piece.
Yeah, so there you go. There's a whole bunch of options for you there. I have the Proxxon sander. This is a tiny little sander thing. That's pretty neat.
It's really cool.
Yeah, and that's neat stuff. There you go. A couple things for you to try out there. Old Gamers Rule. Second Nature Effects in the chat room says that the Dremel router base is good, but it's plastic and it can flex. I've used some shim material and the base to correct the flex. Yeah, I know Dremel has that, and they also have their own drill press sort of thing too. I found the drill press thing they have for that is a little flimsy.
Yeah, the one made by Proxxon is actually it's mainly metal, so there's like no flex to their press. The one drawback that a lot of people were saying about the mill attachment is that it's half metal, half plastic. I haven't run into any issues with it yet, but I can see that over time it would probably break. But for a $90 piece, if it lasts a year, I think it did its job.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah. Not bad at all. And you know what? That's a good place to end. We'll try and link to those Proxxon products in the show notes, so folks watching later can go check those out. Hey everybody, that's it. That's the end of the show. But you can totally go over to let's see, we've got MrPinski 1 on here we go, on Flickr. If you guys want to go see Igor's really cool stuff, also check out his Etsy store. Again, look up MrPinski Props over there on Etsy and buy some of his stuff because it's really, really incredible. And let's see, I'm looking for the let's see if it's on there. There it is. That's the one I want. The Pacific Rim drift helmet. Oh, yeah.
As soon as I watched the movie, I knew I wanted one.
Me too. Thank you, Igor, for coming on the show and hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me.
You betcha. That's it, folks, for this week. Let's see. Next week, I will be in Utah for Nerdtacular. I don't know if we're going to do a show earlier in the week or not, but if you follow my Facebooks and all that stuff, then you'll hear all about it. That's it. That's all we got for this week. So long, everyone. Thanks for watching. Bye.